Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Office Hours with Stephen Tweed. This is April 9th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. on the East Coast, and so we're going to get going, and we have quite a group that have joined us this afternoon for this open conversation about what's going on around the home care world. You all are folks that are connected with me in some way through my newsletters, through my speaking engagements. Some of you have participated in our field trips and other activities. And so we have chosen to open up this 1 hour each week just to share what we know about what other home care companies are doing with regard to COVID-19 and to give you an opportunity to exchange ideas and resources among yourselves. We're really going to cover three key elements again this week. First of all, what companies are doing to care for and protect their caregivers and their clients. Secondly, we're going to talk a little bit about the Family First Corona Care Response Act and the family leave proportion of that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the CARES Act and the Payroll Protection Plan. And we have a guest with us, Glenn Lane is the founder and CEO of Westchester Family Care and I can never say in your town, Glenn, Mamaroneck, is that right?
You got it.
Mamaroneck, New York, and Glenn's a member of our top 7% mastermind group and has done a lot of research on the payroll protection plan. So he's going to share with us in a moment. We're going to go through a couple of things, share some ideas, give you some resources to look at, and then at the end, we'll open it up for any other questions you have about any aspect of home care and coping with COVID-19. And if we have an answer, we'll share it. If we don't have an answer, we'll do some research and see what we can find. We're going to be doing this every Thursday at 4 p.m. for the next 6 weeks or so. And then we'll continue if we see that the participation is good and the need continues. And so let me share my screen here. And there are a couple of things that we've been looking at and talking at. Some of you were with us last week for our very first session of Office Hours, and we talked about how companies are coping with COVID-19, and we talked about protecting clients and caregivers, shortages of personal protective equipment, operating remotely, and how companies are recruiting, interviewing, and onboarding remotely. And we'll continue to update you on information in those 4 topic areas as we go forward. One of the things we did was wrote an article this week for our blog and our newsletter. You can look at the Home Care CEO report at homecareceo.com. And we did an article on helping home care team members work from home more effectively. And I know pretty much everyone is working from home these days. And while you as an owner or leader may be very comfortable working remotely, your office team members may not be as familiar with working remotely with your scheduling software or using the telephone system or using Zoom as a platform for team meetings. So there's an article there that may be helpful to you. The other big issue that we've been talking about in the last week is the availability of personal protective equipment. And I did get an email the other day from Veterans Care Coordination. Some of you may be familiar with VCC, and they're a company that helps veterans receive home care under the benefits of the Veterans Administration. And they sent out an email indicating that they do have access to masks, both the N95 masks and the surgical masks, in a partnership with a company called NextView, a global healthcare equipment company. And I have to say that I did not vet this offer, but I do know the folks at VCC. We've been communicating over the years. And so if you would like to explore this, send me an email at stephen@leadinghomecare.com. I will forward this email to you and you can click on the buttons. I did look at the website and it's pretty clear. about the quantities that you need to order and the prices. And while the prices may be a bit higher than I've seen quoted, if you can't get them, it doesn't matter. So these prices appear to be within reason for the quantities of masks that they have available. So if you'd like that information, send me an email. I'll forward the link to you. You can click on it and see if that's something of interest. Glenn, have you had any more experience with finding personal protective equipment? I know you're sort of in the hotbed of COVID there in New York.
Yeah, so it's interesting. It's not just the PPE. It turned out it's the thermometers, the pulse oximeters, and other things that we struggled with. The counties in New York have a distribution system that has been quite helpful for the bread and butter stuff. So we're kind of low on the totem pole compared to hospitals and nursing homes, but at the same time, we have requirements also for gloves. We've now required all caregivers to wear surgical masks for all shifts. And then we're getting ready to take on a positive case. And so we've ordered eye shields and gowns. So we're getting some amount of equipment periodically from the county. And I don't know how the different states are set up, but that would also be something I would look into. We've been buying stuff on Amazon. We need to take every caregiver's temperature before every shift. Many of our caregivers, including women who are mothers, theoretically in healthcare, did not have thermometers. We were able to get, I guess, about 150 thermometers in about 20 transactions on eBay that worked out. And then our trade group did a buy of masks as well, so that would be another avenue. I know many of you are in the different, associations, home care associations in your states, but so we're scrounging it together. Nothing through our normal supply channels, though, which is kind of interesting.
And you mentioned local buying groups and trade associations. What we're seeing, we actually, on our Monday mastermind meeting, as many of you know, we have 4 different mastermind groups of owners and CEOs of companies. And so we've been doing a Monday mastermind meeting of all of our mastermind members coming together. And we were talking about this past Monday, and one of our members had found a resource and was looking at making a very large purchase of masks. But our members felt like through their local groups that they were organizing in their local communities, they were able to get masks. So we didn't put together that big, huge purchase, but we have connected a number of people who are going together. So talk to your friendly competitors in your local market and see if you can come together and get the size of order quantities that will enable you to work with these suppliers.
Can we place an order from Jude on the top right there?
Yes. Hi, Jude. Jude looks like he has protective equipment. Very good, thank you. If anyone has any suggestions for this topic or has a resource, feel free to unmute yourself and come on and tell us what you are doing with regard to personal protective equipment or other things with regard to caring for your caregivers and your clients. Any suggestions anyone has? Okay, well, we'll keep moving then.
Just jump in, Stephen. Andrew here.
Yes, Andrew, go ahead.
And I secured safety glasses for everybody. And in addition to the surgical masks that we require for all shifts, even in private residence, the safety glasses offer a nice protection. And I'll just turn my camera on and just show you what they look like.
Okay, great.
But, as far as safety glasses go, they could be a lot worse. But when you have the mask and the gloves, it really offers a nice protection, prevents you from touching your eye, rubbing your eye, and also would prevent anything from, if anyone was to cough or airborne directly.
Very good.
Yeah.
And not only is it a physical barrier, Andrew, but what we're seeing is a lot of this is an emotional comfort for the clients. When they see a caregiver who has masks, gloves, safety glasses. I've seen a number of ads for the wraparound face shields. some of which are attached to a hat or a cap. Oftentimes it has more to do with the emotional comfort of the client than it does the actual physical barrier of protecting the droplets of liquid that contain the coronavirus. Obviously, anything we can do to protect those or prevent those droplets from traveling is going to be a help. Anyone else have any suggestions or resources of things that they have done, places that they've ordered equipment? Okay, well, let's...
Stephen, I got one.
Oh, yeah, go ahead. Bill James?
Yes. So we had, I'm sure like everyone else, thought we ordered and then it got delayed, got shut down, whatever. But I found one group, they're based in Philadelphia. Actually not that bad of a price. It's 60 cents for surgical masks. They also have KN95 masks. We're not ordering them. They also have 300 milliliter of sanitizer. And I'll give you guys the phone number. I spoke with them 2 hours ago. They still had everything in stock. It's 267-800-9729. We ordered 1,000 surgical masks for our caregivers. I ordered them yesterday at 3:30 Eastern time. As long as you get it in by 5 p.m., it might be pushing it for today. They shipped UPS and they should be delivered by today, $15 shipping.
Very good. And what's the name of the company, Bill?
It is K-Fin Trade, K as in kilo, F as in foxtrot, I as in India, N as in Nancy, then trade @gmail.com is their email. It's a little weird. I called them, said I want to order 1,000 masks. And they said, yep, no problem. We got it in stock. They said, send me an email with what you want to order. And they came back and they can't take credit cards directly, but I've never used PayPal in my life. I signed up with PayPal and make sure you put it as like that you're paying for a service or whatever it is. Linked our corporate card, clicked pay, emailed them back, and they said, good, it's shipped. It should be here by the end of the day. It's 60 cents a mask. It's cheaper than I found anywhere else. And
what was that email? What was the email again, Bill?
sure. K-Fin Trade. K as in Kayla, sorry, Kilo, F as in Foxtrot, I as in India, N as in Nancy, and TRADE @gmail.com. Phone number again is 267-800-9729. And just call them, tell them how much you want to order. They'll say, hopefully, cross your fingers, they still have it. They'll tell you to email them with the details of how much you want and the delivery address. And then they'll email you a QuickBooks thing. It's kind of weird. They don't take credit cards over the phone or whatever. Pay them via PayPal or Venmo or whatever the other things are. And once they get the payment, I did it at like 4 o'clock yesterday. It shipped out UPS. Give me a tracking number. It should be here by the end of the day.
Very good, Bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
For those who weren't quick enough to write it down, Jill has typed in the email address and the telephone number in the chat box. So if you click on chat down at the bottom on your right-hand side of your screen will be the chat room, and you can see that email address and phone number. Thanks so much, Bill. We appreciate that. Does anybody else have resources that they're willing to share for personal protective equipment or other resources for your caregivers or your clients? Okay, well, let's keep moving along. And the next piece that we want to talk about is the couple of the federal laws. Monday, we talked about the 3 of them and gave folks a high-level overview. We have a little bit more information today on the Families First Coronavirus Response Act that was passed on March the 18th. And this is the act that includes the Family Medical Leave Expansion Act and also the Emergency Unemployment Insurance Stabilization and Access Act. And there's a number of resources out there, but I encourage you to look at this on a regular basis. Today I attended the video conference put on by the Home Care Association of America and the National Association for Home Care and Hospice with the attorneys from Littler, Mendelson and Company. and I screen grabbed one of their slides that shows an overview of the paid leave provisions. And this was a topic of discussion last week because the question was whether or not home care companies are exempt from this family paid leave. And after much research, NAC, HCAOA, and Littler Mendelson are in agreement that home care companies are included under the home health care language that's in the law, and we are in fact exempt from providing this family leave. However, the attorneys suggested that we need to take a look at, do we want to use that exemption, or do we want to waive the exemption from the Family Leave Act and in fact grant your employees this paid leave? There are two parts of it: the emergency paid sick leave provision, which is up to 80 hours or 10 days of work. There are 6 different provisions that entitle a person to participate in this. And depending on the provisions or the 6 different reasons, they'll receive either full pay or 2/3 pay, subject to some caps. The Emergency Family Leave Act gives people up to 12 weeks of family leave based on family situations like childcare that require them to not or prevent them from working. And this is 12 weeks. Weeks 1 and 2 are unpaid, and then weeks 3 through 12 are paid. What the attorneys were saying, and this is where I encourage you to do more research into this if you are considering either taking the exemption or waiving the exemption, because they also did an in-depth discussion of the unemployment regulations that are also part of this act. And as you may have seen, the federal government is adding on $600 per week to the state unemployment programs. And so depending on the laws of your particular state, the big concern in the industry is that with caregivers, they may be receiving more dollars to stay home than they are receiving to work. And the law says that an individual caregiver cannot take advantage of both the family leave and unemployment. And so if you are exempting your company from the FFCRA law and the emergency paid leave, then they would be entitled to 12 weeks of leave versus 36 weeks of unemployment. So you need to look at your particular situation and understand the law and get some legal advice on which of those options to choose. This was an excellent program today, and the HCAOA and the National Association for Home Care and Hospice are doing this every Thursday at noon, and you can go to hcaoa.org or NAHC, I think it's .org also, and there's a place to sign up to participate in this program. So if you want more on that part of the act, I'd encourage you to dig into that. This is one of the pieces that's sort of changing almost daily, but one of the key points that the attorneys made that I think is important for us to realize is that while the industry and the Department of Labor believe that we're exempt from this law, they said the biggest threat is not from the Department of Labor, but it is from plaintiffs' attorneys, and that the home care industry has been an industry that has been a target for class action lawsuits. You recall that a year or so ago when the overtime exemption was changed by the Department of Labor and did away with our caregivers being exempt from minimum wage and overtime, that plaintiffs' attorneys immediately leaped on that, and there were over 100 class action lawsuits that were filed with regard to overtime and minimum wage. So the threat here is not so much a problem with the Department of Labor as it is with plaintiffs' attorneys. So I encourage you to learn more about that going forward. The other big law that we're talking about is the CARES Act, and there's a number of, this is the $2.2 trillion law that provides a variety of different provisions to help individuals and companies and organizations. And one of the significant pieces of that is the Paycheck Protection Program. That's part of the Small Business Administration. And we have a special guest with us, Glenn Lane from Westchester Family Care. And Glenn has done a fair amount of research on this and has, in fact, applied for it with his company. So Glenn, tell us a little bit about your experience, what you've learned, and what you suggest for the companies that are on the line.
Sure. So I think the number one thing is we all should be applying for this. I see it as kind of really a once in a lifetime. We've got a lot of once in a lifetime negative things going on. This is a once in a lifetime positive thing in response to the situations we're all in. There's a couple of different loans that have always been out there directly from the SBA. One of them is an emergency or economic injury disaster relief. That's directly from the SBA. A lot of hoops, a lot of paperwork in response to big disasters that we've had in the past, things like Katrina, Sandy, et cetera. There's another type of SBA loan, a 7A, that is underwritten or originated by lenders that could be banks or could be preferred lenders in the SBA's circle. And the Paycheck Protection Program is part of this 7A program. So it's not directly with SBA, it's by lenders. And the underwriting criteria for this are very, very light, deliberately. Treasury wanted to get as much money in the hands of businesses based on payroll to maintain or rehire as they could. And so the SBA is the government agency that in the end will be potentially buying these back or forgiving them from us. But in the end, it's the banks, and in many cases, the banks want to do this with their own clients. So the first place to go for this would definitely be to your own bank. The loan amount is based on your average payroll over the last year. It can be calendar year 19, or it can be the 12 months ending March 31. Some of the banks have preferences for 2019, given that it's a little easier to substantiate. But you basically average your payroll, you add certain things back in, things like employer paid taxes, employer paid pension contributions, employer paid medical, and you take the year, you divide it by 12. You have to adjust for anybody that's over 100,000. So basically, when you do your calculation for a year, the people that are over 100 in compensation, not benefits, you would deduct the amount over 100 for the year. And that number is the annual payroll. You divide by 12, you multiply by 2.5, and that's the amount of the loan that you're eligible for. Also, if you have existing SBA loans, they can be added to that. And in the end, it starts with the bank, it goes through some processes, some underwriting at your bank, and then it gets presented to the SBA window for review. They approve it as something that they would, in essence, buy back when it gets forgiven, and then the loan is funded. To date, as best I know, no one has gotten $1 from the program. It's an amazing amount of press. They're fighting in Congress today over adding another $250 billion to it. But there's a lot of institutions that are taking loans, and a lot of loans have gotten presented to the SBA window for the next step. The second part of it, the forgiveness part, a lot of us are struggling with, in the sense that there's something unique about this that we've just never seen before. It's almost like in the too good to be true category, especially for our types of businesses where we still have revenue. Largely, we're still able to maintain payroll, although there's certainly things we could do with a loan like this to really buttress our business, get it ready for the recovery and the increase in demand that's going to happen. But basically, over the 8 weeks after you get the loan, if you maintain and use the proceeds of the loan largely for payroll, there's some other expenses that are in there, but largely for payroll, meaning 3/4 of the amount goes to payroll over the 8-week period, with a bit of an allowance for rent, your medical insurance, again, utilities, which have a very broad definition. At the end of 6 months, there'll be an exercise that'll be managed with your bank that the loan will be forgiven. And then if the loan is not forgiven or a portion of it doesn't meet the forgiveness, basically it turns into a 2-year loan at 1% interest, and it amortizes over the next 2 years, equal monthly installments. Basically, given that interest rate, it's basically the loan amount divided by 24 would be the monthly payments you would have to make to retire the loan. So, amazing opportunity. Start with your own bank, but there's others out there that are originating not to only their own clients. There's hundreds, if not over, I guess, a couple of thousand in the end, banks that are doing this. We're well into it now, so we're 13 days, or I'm sorry, we're 6 days in from when the program opened on Friday. There was a lot of debate in the government that really slowed it down at the last minute and really caused a lot of the banks to back away. That has been overcome to an extent, as the Fed has now come in and basically said they'll backstop the banks here and they'll finance these and they'll buy them if needed, aside from the whole SBA guarantee on it. So that's what I know. I applied through my bank, which is Chase. I haven't heard anything back yet other than a acknowledgement. I also did send PDF applications into a couple of other lenders. Technically, you should be applying in one place, and my view is I'm just so unsure of the processing capacity and speed here. I made a decision that I would withdraw the other applications once I had heard confirmation that someone else is advancing it to the next step.
Very good. Thank you so much, Glenn. If anyone has a question for Glenn, you may type it into the chat box, or you can unmute yourself and verbally tell us your question, and we'll see if Glenn might be able to answer, or maybe we have another resource available for you. Any questions at all for Glenn? Okay. Well, thanks, Glenn. We appreciate that. Yeah, Andrew, you have a comment.
Yeah, just a question. We applied for our loan as well, and I think this came up at last week's call. But I guess having to spend that money within the 8-week window for forgiveness, is that where the idea of hazard pay is coming in, and that's where that hazard pay is going to come from? Anyone have any thoughts or comments on that?
I think there's all sorts of creative things we could do. First of all, we're going to have an unbelievable recruiting opportunity in front of us now. Just like Steve was alluding with the paid family leave, whether we're exempt and want to take advantage of it or not, I think we can really differentiate ourselves during this time with things we could do with that money, whether it's additional pay, bonus. One of my ideas is basically I'm going to have caregivers that have lost their clients on the bench that will give me some cushion as other caregivers might fall by the wayside or demand increases. So whether it's increasing the pay to those that are there or paying some people to be available, we're having a lot of competition from unemployment right now. In New York, someone that's lost their primary job, and I've got a couple of them, they're getting as much as $1,100 a week to not work. And so you can compete with that a bit with the money, should you be able to get it.
Great, thanks.
You have another question? And okay, good. And you raised that question of hazard pay, and we see companies doing a number of different things, some of which Glenn mentioned, of increasing the hourly rate. We have some folks that have literally begun paying their caregivers time and a half for straight time, and actually paying double time for overtime hours to increase the dollars that their caregivers are getting to encourage them to continue to work. There have been another number of other creative ideas that companies are using to reward the caregivers who are working and encourage them to keep working. Are there other questions or comments about any of the things that we have talked about today?
I see Rebecca in the chat window, and her question is, would it only make the eligible expenses forgivable if you can prove that your company couldn't cover the costs? And the answer to that is no. That's one of the unusual things about us as a home care industry, is that our business hasn't been decimated by this. It's been impacted by it, but that's the beauty here, is we may be able to cover some of these costs unrelated to the loan, but we're still eligible for it. We're still eligible for the forgiveness. So it gives us an investment opportunity here that's unprecedented.
Thanks, Glenn, and thanks, Rebecca, for that question. If there are other questions, feel free to type them into the chat box or to unmute yourself and share your question. What other questions do we have today? All right, I don't see any more questions. And so we're going to end a little bit early today. We will be on again next Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time with new information. If you have questions that you would like to put forward for next week, or if you have other resources, please feel free to send me an email, stephen@leadinghomecare.com. Also invite you to visit homecareceo.com and click on the Home Care CEO report for articles that we are writing, pretty much a couple articles a week on new information. Those often go out in our newsletter. But if you have a question, if you have information, if there's anything that we can do to support you, send us an email, pick up the phone, give us a call, and we will be here to support you in any way that we can. And did I see something else in the chat? Oh, one more question. Has anybody considered purchasing reusable masks made from cotton? I can answer that, yes. We have a number of companies that have purchased cotton masks that are reusable, and they have a regular cycle of washing them. Matter of fact, what some of them have done, have provided 3 of those reusable masks to caregivers, 1 for today, 1 for tomorrow, 1 for in the wash. We also have a member of our mastermind group that is using reusable cotton gowns that their people are wearing. And again, they're washing and reusing those gowns. So yes, there are people using reusable masks. Any other questions anybody has? Anything else for the good of the order today? Anything you would like to share? Again, unmute and share, or go ahead and type it into the chat box. And Glenn says, good to see everyone. By the way, I sent an email to the Philadelphia vendor and the phone rang in 30 seconds. So, all right, very good. That's good to know. And did you physically talk to them, Glenn? I did.
I bought some hand sanitizer. Governor Cuomo's making hand sanitizer here in New York, but it's hard to get to. So I replenished my stock with a 25 bottles from the guys in Philly.
Okay. Well, I'm not in Louisville, or I try to get you some. The bourbon distilleries in Kentucky are turning raw alcohol into hand sanitizer and making it available. I haven't tried any. I don't know if it has any of that charred oak barrel flavor to it, but we are making sanitizer out of raw bourbon.
Yep.
Well, thanks everyone for being with us. Again, if we can help you in any way, and we'll see you again next week. If you already registered, this same login number will work for you. We will send a reminder email with the link to connect again next week. If there's anyone else that you know of that might benefit from being on, feel free to share the registration link, and they can go on and register and be part of the group. Jill, is there anything you would like to add to any of this?
And I think the confirmation email was a little confusing.
Oh,
I
okay.
put Mondays instead of Thursdays, but the dates were correct. But just like see you on, instead of saying Thursdays, it said Mondays. So it is Thursdays. I corrected it. So when I
Okay.
send it out again, it will say Thursday.
All righty, very good.
So, yep.
Thank you very much for doing that, Jill. Again, thanks everybody, and we'll see you next week. Have a great week. Be safe. Stay home. Bye-bye.